My name is Thomas O'Regan. I'm a professional property investor here in Australia. Me and my wife have 20x our property portfolio in the last four years. Now, I just wanted to talk about one of the ways that a lot of Australians, a lot of people I think it's mostly just Australians, but other nationalities can do it too that live in Australia. A lot of the way that people build wealth in Australia is through their own home, and it is. I will tell you, it is very different doing it in Australia than it is in other countries like the US and the Philippines. And the reason that is, the main reason it's easier to build wealth in your own home in Australia versus in other countries is because of the way the way the way the ATO taxes homes, the way the ATO taxes principal place of residence, your own home. Essentially, in Australia, your home is tax-free. You do not pay tax on your home. Now, in other countries, and when I say tax, I mean annual tax. You don't pay annual tax, like as in the Philippines, for example, you have to pay annual tax of whatever the land value is. So, for example, let's just say the land value is $1 million, for example, you pay a percentage of that fee, maybe like 3% per year to own that property, even though it's your own home. Same thing in America. The other major benefit in Australia of owning a home and having the majority of your wealth, or having a large portion, or building your wealth in your own home in Australia, is that when you sell your home in Australia, different from an investment property, you do not have to pay capital gains tax. Now, if you're building an investment property portfolio and you have to sell your investment property or whatever, you don't have to, but you sell it anyway, for whatever reason, because you've got a large capital gain, whatever, you sell that, you have to pay a large portion of that to tax. So that is gonna, if you're building a property portfolio building wealth through an investment property portfolio by selling it and upgrading, each time you sell it, you have to pay a huge portion of tax, which is essentially going to stunt your growth, your property portfolio's growth, much more than if you didn't have to pay tax, because the tax is a substantial portion of your profit. If you were just able to straight away reinvest the money untaxed into another asset, you could grow your asset in an investment portfolio much faster. Okay, so I just want to say, in America, I'm pretty sure it's called the 1031 exchange, which is in an investment portfolio, you can sell your It's in America, you can sell your, sorry if I didn't get the 1031 exchange proper right, but there is some sort of thing like that. You can sell your investment properties in America tax-free. You just have to buy another or roll the money into another investment very quickly. So in America, they're actually promoting people to build large investment portfolios, which is why it's kind of like sad in a way, because all these big investment funds come out and they build a lot of wealth like that, and there's like larger apartment complexes that are just essentially like rentals and things like that, and no one owns the apartments individually, and so on and so forth. So there's just big, huge companies that own huge amounts of rentals. But back to Australia, so basically, if you're selling an investment property in Australia, you get taxed. Capital gains tax is what it's called, obviously. The principal place of residence, and why people are able to build a lot of wealth in principal place of residence, because one, no annual tax, which is different from other countries, okay? And two, and it's different from other countries, and it's different from investment properties in Australia. If you own investment properties in Australia, you also have to pay land tax in some states if you're over the threshold. But in Australia, if you're in your principal place of residence, you don't pay land tax, you don't pay capital gains. So what people do, this is what people do, they buy a home and they might renovate it or they might not, it doesn't matter. But essentially the property goes up in value and then they upsize they go, okay, cool, property's gone up in value. Let's take the growth out of the property portfolio, untaxed, and buy a bigger home. Buy a bigger home. They just recycle that process over and over and over again. And that is how Australians become wealthy, and that's why Australians hold most of their wealth in property. And when I say property, I mean their principal place of residence, okay? So that's a pretty cool thing about Australia, and that's something to consider if you're building wealth in Australia. It's always good to overlay like what the investment portfolio, if you're an investor, it's always good to overlay what the investment portfolio's growth is per year versus what the principal place, what your home's growth is per year, and then map out if you were to put X amount of dollars in your own home, how much, when I say if you put X amount of deposit down to buy your own home, how much will that deposit, how much wealth will you build in that deposit there versus how much wealth will you build in your investment portfolio? Because generally, not generally, but depending what type of investments you build in, you're buying, principal place of residence homes can on a long-term basis increase at a higher capital growth rate than an investment property. And this is just like, obviously there's so many variables, but let's just say the type of investment properties I invest in, the annualized growth rate over a long period of time is far less than the home I would look at purchasing, right? Now, even if your investment portfolio grows more, or the capital, the total value of it is higher than a principal place of residence, you have to do the calculation after tax, after paying capital gains tax. If I was to sell that investment portfolio, would I get net money in the bank higher than if I was to sell my principal place of residence and not get taxed? So that's an interesting strategy to throw into or think about throwing into your portfolio if you are just solely buying investment properties. Think about investing also in your own home, just like most Australians do, and how most Australians build wealth in Australia. See you guys next time. Bye.